So I think maybe a good place to start is with you, Gabriel. So why don't you tell us about TV4's total TV strategy first?
Okay, but can I ask a favor first?
Oh, of course.
Because I have an audience,
yes.
and TV is all about reach and audience. So my boss is in the other room. So whenever I say something, I need like a really good response. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. So starting off with our total TV strategy, I should probably give you a little bit of background. Sweden is a pretty small market. We're about 10 million people, and TV is all about reach. It's also about efficiency and trust and return on investment and measurements and all the stuff we've been talking about. But kind of the first thing you have to get in place or keep in place out of a total TV perspective is reach. And on the Swedish market, 10 years ago, you were able to reach a mass audience through one simple signal. That's not the case today, as we all know. You might need 10 or 20 different signals, so we have to gather the audience in a new way, if you will. So a couple of years ago, we decided on a strategy that we call from viewer to user, because we have a growing amount of people in Sweden that prefers to consume our content and other quality content through a digital signal. They want a bigger freedom on how to consume content. And because they still want quality content, and they still want the curated way of consuming that content. So we had to get better fast at understanding what they wanted. And we're not maybe there yet. We'll never be all the way there, but we're getting better at it. And that kind of ties into the total TV strategy, which has many different layers. But maybe the two most important parts is one of them is catering to the advertiser. What the advertiser wants is a simple, cost-efficient way to reach mass audience with video in their targeted audience, measured by a trusted third party. So it seems simple enough, but as we all know, it isn't. But that's not what they want. And our total TV strategy on the commercial side is kind of the answer to that. We have a joint industry company called MMS in Sweden that measures all TV and all online for us. So we're able to deliver on a total TV product. We have 4 today. 1 is regional and 3 is national, and that's where we're starting off. So our advertisers can buy the total audience in specific target group. We're starting off there. But of course, our vision is to expand that to offer the choice, as we do to our users, offer the same choice to our advertisers. Linear, digital, a specific audience or a specific segment in the future.
So your drive towards addressable was really geared at giving you better reach, not necessarily at delivering addressable today, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, we have an addressable product that we use on our VOD services and on our TV partner services as well. Because the other part was, of course, reaching as big of an audience as possible. And to be able to do that, I kind of hate to use the word collaboration because everyone has been talking about it, but I'm not sure that everyone's doing it yet. We tried to, and we decided a couple of years ago that we had to find a way to make it easy for our partners like Comhem, Canal Digital, and Telia, and so forth, the MVPDs of Sweden, to to help us reach the audience that they have on our content. And that's also what we're doing today together with YoSpace and other vendors as well.
So we'll get to the collaboration piece in just a second. Tim, we have talked long about addressability, but we really haven't talked about how you actually implement it, how you do the dynamic ad insertion, how you get it really smooth. Talk to how you help TV4 make this a real TV experience.
Yeah. So I guess the first thing to say is what we've observed in the Nordics and particularly in Sweden is it's a pretty advanced market, partly because of how aggressively audience switched from terrestrial TV to streamed content, whether that's video on demand or live linear TV. And so perhaps more than other markets, this concept of total TV means that the experience for the end user really has to be TV, regardless of whether it's the large screen from a streaming device or whether it's mobile, computer, games console. Really doesn't matter. To the end user, it has to be TV, and a true TV experience. And I guess equally as importantly for YoSpace, to the boards of the big TV companies and distributor companies, it needs to be TV. It needs to be as reliable, and yet it needs to innovate at the pace of OTT and the internet and digital, while still delivering a consistent, genuine broadcast experience at scale, and interacting with all of the other components of the ecosystem that make it all possible. So with server-side ad insertion, essentially we're managing a streaming session for every single user. So when someone joins the stream, it's not just during the ad break that the SSAI platform is responsible for the quality of service, the user experience. It's throughout that streaming experience. And if you've got a major sports event or a sort of appointment TV, the spikes in audience that you get often just at the point of an ad break all needs to be supported and scaled for. And the other overused phrase this last couple of days has perhaps been fragmentation. The fact that you've got to do that across every single platform. And one of the drivers for the broadcasters to be looking at moving from the more traditional sort of client-side model for how you deliver ads into content to server-side is, firstly, it does give a better user experience. You don't get any of the buffering between content and adverts, so there's no jarring knowledge that I'm actually having ads pushed to me. It does feel like TV. But the other one is it allows you to reach far more platforms far more rapidly. And of course, measurement is absolutely critical. So again, another sort of advantage that the Swedish market has is the collaboration that the programmers have around their MMS measurement standard, and the fact that they standardized on the specification for how they would deliver targeted advertising and server-side ad insertion across the board. So for us, that's been great because that's seen a real acceleration of the adoption of the technologies. But as I say, there is an expectation that it has exactly the same uptime and quality experiences as traditional TV.
Right. So let's spend a little bit of time talking about measurement. What were you hopefully trying to achieve with the measurement, Gabriel?
Well, in the work that MMS has done together with the three biggest broadcasters four really in Sweden is the possibility to trade on a strong, transparent currency that TV historically has had, and that the advertiser also buys into and want to have in the future as well. It is really complex to solve the total measurement, and you have to have a lot of different technologies in place to make it happen. But as David mentioned from NENT earlier today, we have to try to walk as far as we can, not maybe solve everything the first day, but solve the first part, and then the rest. So gathering the broadcasters and the advertiser around something they can buy into is the first step. And then we want everyone else to buy into the same thing. And by everyone, we also mean everyone. And we're doing tests with some big American companies that are delivering video in Sweden.
Okay, and so I did say we were going to come back to collaboration. We've talked, that's been another huge topic here at the show. How did you go about getting Comhem and Telia to work with you on this particular solution?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we of course negotiate with every MVPD, and that's above my pay grade. So I don't know how that is, but we have a kind of we kind of have an understanding in Sweden that content is kind of worth something to someone, and
we certainly hope so.
Yeah. The MVPDs, of course, understands that to be able to deliver our content, there is some kind of price, and to be able for us to continue investing in quality content that people want to consume, we have to be able to monetize on that. But we didn't really start with the MVPDs, but we started with our competitors on the Swedish market. So we sat down a couple of years ago and we created a standard of two things: how our partners should ask for and deliver ads, and how it should be measured. So we agreed on that standard to make it as easy as possible for all of our partners to buy into that. And as a result of that, I know that YoSpace is working with all of them as well to deliver, because it's easier that way. And they are in the forefront in that kind of technology.
So let's stop for a moment. Tim, how was that a difficult process?
Maybe difficult for these guys. I think we arguably had the easier part because it was just the technology. I think one thing that's certainly true is that the implementations that we have completed in the Scandinavian market have typically, from project initiation to go live, have been much quicker, because there is a template for how it should all work, and everyone's talking broadly the same language, and there's local systems integrators who have experience of working with us. So we would hope, whether it's with YoSpace or other vendors, we would hope that it's a pretty good model for other markets, because we're certainly across more platforms, both in terms of more distributors but also device types in Sweden than we are in quite a few other markets.
Right. Now, one of the remarkable things about the Swedish market is how advanced it is in OTT adoption, in digital consumption adoption. Your solution actually provides linear and AVOD or BVOD in the app and the package. So does that create? I mean, how much viewership are you seeing on traditional TV versus on OTT, and what's the trend? I think we know what the trend is, but give us a sense of the velocity of the trend.
Yeah, well, the trend is that the consumption of video in Sweden is growing fast. The total consumption, it's a decline in the traditional sense, in linear, in viewing time, and we're anticipating somewhere in the first quarter of next year. The total viewing time of every day, daily numbers, is going to be higher on digital than linear. So that's where we're at on this.
Certainly, I've got some data later, which I'm going to show before the panel, which I think totally agrees with what you're saying there. Tim, this creates a pretty interesting situation for you. We've talked long about, can digital scale to TV sizes, TV audience sizes? You have to prove it.
I mean, on the scale point, I think we've already proven that in some of the other markets where we're working. So I think we, without wanting to sound complacent, demonstrating that SSAI and personalised addressable advertising can be delivered at scale is there's constant focus on that, but I think it's something that we've already achieved, based on the scales of audiences that we've delivered for major sports events. The other challenge, though, is the drive around it just being TV. it's not just about scale. Scale's really important. Obviously, if you have any issues during major events or at any point during the program, if traditional TV goes off air for 30 seconds, that will be on the front page of the newspapers, and the same is increasingly now true if it's an OTT service. So for sure, scale's important, but reliability while still innovating. So while supporting all of the new features, but ensuring that doesn't introduce any degradation in user experience. So whether that's support for programmatic or live pause or cloud DVR or any of the other things that people expect from an OTT service that you don't have with traditional TV, what you can't do is implement all the new shiny things and suddenly find that the quality of service is dipping or the reliability is impacted in any way.
But there's a couple of aspects of this that kind of boggles my mind. One of them is in live TV, when you're doing ad insertion, it's all the beacons, all the replies that you get back about how the consumption went for that content. This can create a storm of messages. Is scaling to that, is that a real challenge? And I'm thinking, if TV4 is carrying the World Cup, is that a problem?
So I guess there's two parts to it. The bit that so I'm going to pass the buck a little bit because I know Leon's on a panel later, so I'll let him answer in the context of the ad tech platforms, the ad servers, the programmatic platforms. But from an SSAI perspective, our responsibility is in two areas. Firstly, it's obviously dealing with the load of those users, and at the point of an ad break, platforms like ours are busier than they are during the regular programming. But it's also around having techniques so that firstly we don't swamp the primary ad servers, because people assume that the big names who provide these ad servers have solved all of these problems, but particularly for live, there is the traffic patterns with live are totally different from video on demand. Even when you've got the new season of Game of Thrones opening episode being available on VOD at the same time as it is as live, you still don't get every single user joining at exactly the same time. So we have to have techniques that allow us to manage the pace of those ad calls to the ad server without completely breaking the models that are used for pacing algorithms and inventory management. But we have to ensure that we're not hitting the ad server with a tsunami of requests right at the point of the ad break. But then we also need to allow sufficient time for all of the programmatic handshake to take place. So today in the European market, the broadcasters aren't heavily reliant on programmatic, but in the US we see a lot more use of programmatic. Again, if you're making all of those requests at just a second before or a few seconds before the ad break, even if the primary ad server is scaled correctly and is performant, one of the elements in the programmatic ecosystem potentially will either consider this to be fraudulent traffic or will slow down. And of course, the whole reason for opening up your inventory programmatically is to drive up yield, but also to achieve high fill rates. And if you start seeing timeouts there and you start, so for example, having slates at the end of the ad break which say, your program will resume shortly, it's not a great user experience if that runs on for an extended period of time. But equally, it's lost advertising opportunity for the broadcasters. So, a lot of it is around ensuring that you do it at scale, but whilst being sympathetic to all of the other parts of the ecosystem, and that's where we've been focusing quite heavily, in the last sort of 6 months or so.
I can mention when we started trying ingesting ads in live streams, we didn't do it server side. We did it client side. We had two guys sitting in the basement looking at the TV linear stream and pushing a button whenever we hit the break. And this was in the European Hockey Championship.
I hope you paid them well.
And we, they kind of missed when the break was over, and there was a goal immediately after the content started again. But some of our viewers only saw ads, which is good to me because I'm an ad guy. But they weren't that happy about it.
I can imagine. I can imagine your switchboard must have lit up right after that. Yeah. Well, we're almost out of time. I've got one last question for you, Gabriel. You mentioned that you're really only focused on reach for your addressable. So when are you going to really start selling the addressable pods? What's your goal there? What's your time frame?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we have an addressable product today on our VOD service and on some of our MVPDs as well. When we discuss addressability in the Swedish market, we normally define it as in the boxes in itself. using that data. And since we have a new owner since about a week ago, and they own a lot of boxes and have the control of some of the households, we're hoping that sometime next year we'll be able to test that out and learn stuff about that to make our products stronger.
Very good. Well, from what we heard in the last presentation, I think you'll be pleased with the results. Yeah. Tim, Gabriel, thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Thanks.